I've been here almost 8 years, and you're probably one of the guys here that I've talked to the least, just because of, where you live, where you operate, and all that stuff. So I love every chance we get to sit down and get to know each other a little bit more. So this will be fun.
HydraPak, by the way, we do hydration products for endurance sports. Think like hiking, biking, cycling, things like backpack reservoirs, flasks, bike water bottle.
So the HydraPak, when you started that up, was that because that was something that you were super passionate about yourself and just thought, hey, I kind of want to tap into this industry with taking what you like about it and what you think could be improved upon?
Yeah, I never grew up dreaming about water bottles like that. I don't have one of those stories.
Right.
I grew up in the family business that my father had. It was an industrial business in Minnesota. When I got out of college, I really wanted to see other kinds of businesses. And along the lines, one of those was consumer products. It actually was an athletic footwear company. And I got pretty deep into some of the marketing and product design aspects of what they did, although I was more from the finance side. But I loved it. And I thought I really enjoyed that kind of cycle, that developing for people, the kind of annual product cycle that you have with consumer products. And I personally enjoyed biking and hiking and cycling and everything. And so I really kind of felt a personal connection to them as well. So I got involved in that space, worked for a few different companies. Like I said, started off athletic footwear. First job out of grad school was for a startup high-tech snowshoe company. Then went on, ran a mountain bike company for about 5 years. And then in 2001, my goal was always to be an entrepreneur, to run my own company, to be able to go through that experience. And so I felt really solid in 2001. This is the industry I want to be in. This is what I want to do. I'm ready to commit. And so that's when I pulled out my checkbook and signed the bottom line and started.
Well, that leads me to my next question. Mentioning that you always wanted to be an entrepreneur, you clearly grew up around entrepreneurship. It sounds like that was instilled in you at an early age. What were some of the lessons from your dad that you learned and are still with you today?
Started in elementary school working at this business and worked through middle school and high school and for the first few summers of college, and had an amazing chance to, we never got an allowance growing up. We were just given the opportunity to work, sometimes the requirement to work. Classic was I'd go in and work. Maybe it'd be an assembly, maybe it would be in the machine shop, maybe it'd be in the marketing department over time. But at the end of the day, everyone would leave. And my brother and I would often end up in my dad's office, sitting there waiting for him to finish his business at the end of the day. And he would just start talking about what was on his mind or things that had come up that day. And so I don't know if I had an interest or I developed an interest, but I just loved all the stories. I loved all of the examples he gave. And it was just like this continual education of that. And then on the ride home, we'd hear more about it. And he always said he just needed someone to talk to, lonely at the top kind of position. And he could say what he needed to say to his kids. But for us, we just sat there and soaked it all up. And it was, best business education I've ever had.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say, gosh, there's lots of little things. He was a guy who always loved having like little phrases or lessons. And so there were lots of things that pop out that he said that always will pop up in my head. He would say, never mix your business and personal finances. Don't put your name on the company unless you want to stay here forever. Run the company like you're going to sell it tomorrow. He just had a ton of those, but I think probably one of the biggest lessons for me was just watching him and how he worked around his staff and kind of how he ran things. Probably being in Minnesota is a very egalitarian environment. There were no designated parking spots or special lunch rooms or anything like that. There weren't golf afternoons for the executives, or it was very all-inclusive. When he would do the annual parties, it'd be in our backyard in the summer, like several years we roasted a hog out back on a spit, and workers would all just come over and sit in the backyard and hang out all day. And like,
Yeah.
I always thought he did a great job of having a relationship with everyone in his company, and really kind of appreciated each person as an individual. I remember one time he had a guy who was a pack-a-day smoker and smoked in the office, and this was when kind
In
of
the office when you could do that.
in the office, and this is the time frame when no smoking was coming in, right? Like they were starting to ban smoking
Right.
in concert venues and things like this.
Right.
And so the majority of the company got together and like, we want to ban smoking in the office. And they came to my dad and said, okay, the majority of us agree we want to ban smoking. And so he had to kind of like stand up to the mob and say, well, okay, the majority agrees, but every single person works here. We have each person's interests to take into mind. And so he didn't smoke, but it was very important for him to kind of make sure that each employee was heard. I've always thought of those circumstances, the way that he approached people, and I try to emulate that myself. I'm not as much of an outgoing person as he was. He had that natural people charisma, magnetism. Got people just would notice when he'd walk into a room, and so he was great from that aspect. And so we don't all have that characteristic, but we can all try to emulate that and just be good to all the people around us.
Yeah, it sounds like that has definitely been brought over by you and the other members of the leadership into PrideCo's culture. I think everybody here can attest to that. It's always a very welcoming environment. Well, there's definitely no pretentiousness around here, and everybody is very relatable. So it definitely transferred over here.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great to hear. What do you say to people when they ask you that question?
If you're on the topic of what are your lending parameters, what are your guidelines, what's your credit box, you're talking about leverage, talking about rates, and every conversation is the same. And a lot of our competitors have very similar guidelines and parameters. The fact that we're a family office. So there's a lot of respect immediately. I think that when people hear family office, they know what it takes. And not everybody understands what it is, but a lot of people understand what it takes to establish a family office. And the fact that we've been around for 20 years and that we've weathered these financial storms says a lot. I think people really get that especially in the last 5 years, seeing what's transpired in our industry. People saying they're still in business, but they're really not in business. The experience they've had with working with some of those companies. So that's really pretty much what I point to the most. And then sometimes just tell specific stories about one of the deals that we just funded and how we were able to work with them on the back end, and when things go sideways, how we were communicating with the borrower, whereas you're not going to really get that experience either somewhere else. Like I said earlier, I'm going on 8 years, and so I've seen a lot of the same people that are still in the industry. There is that respect that PrideCo has earned, and it's a very, very big industry, and we're a very small part of it, but we're also very well known. Last couple questions for you. So after everything that you have been a part of, is there anything that you are most proud of?
So in addition to PrideCo and HydraPak, which I mentioned, I've also been on the board of a company called Fast Test for the last 20 years. It was a company that my father started way back when. And then when he sold his business, this was a smaller company he didn't sell, but he was ready to step out. And so my brother and I stepped in and took over as board members, and I'm now the chairman of the board this company as well. So I kind of look across several of these businesses. I've been involved in all for 20 plus years. And so like, what's the commonality? Because these are totally different. One's an industrial business, one's a consumer products business, one, investment management. I definitely think I've gotten an approach over the years, and the power of persistence. Your purpose should never change. Your strategy should only evolve or change occasionally. But if you think you've got something that's important that fits or whatnot, stick with it. Grow it over time. Don't have too short of a horizon. The ability to be nimble to market feedback, but also learn and then continue to apply that towards your ultimate goals. So I'd put persistence as a big thing I'm proud of. Curiosity paired with that, which is always trying to learn. Yeah. Again, capitalism is fantastic. The marketplace is always giving us feedback. It's always giving us lessons. How well are you listening? How well are you open to those lessons? If you can combine these things, you can get a lot more evolving over time than you can just like with one idea to start. And probably the last thing is I have developed a pretty conservative philosophy for cash management and investing and whatnot. We are not here to be gamblers. We do not, this
Right.
is not going to a casino. Like as an entrepreneur, you're paid to find opportunities, not to find risk. And once you find an opportunity, how can you pursue it with the least amount of risk? People say, don't you feel afraid of all the risk of a small business person? And it's true that there's a lot of risk that you can't control things when you're a smaller player. But I'm forever saying no to risk. I'm just looking for opportunities. And that really has allowed me to sleep at night. It's allowed me to raise my family, to have work-life balance, because it's not, again, somebody trying to make a big bet to make it rich and going up and down quickly. So kind of those things tied together, like curiosity, persistence, conservatism. I'd say it's a philosophy that's worked for me and it's worked across different businesses. And so I'm proud of what we've achieved. It's just kind of, I think the way you're feeling, it is about trying to create a great work environment for people with that kind of, people feel at home, people feel involved, included.
As an employee of PrideCo, it makes us feel good knowing that that's your philosophy. And if you're treating everything with that perspective, then that's how you're treating us as well. And it's funny that you mentioned that. I remember first coming on, and there was a deal request that we had for a property out in a section of Palm Springs. I brought it to and I was reviewing the deal with him, and he said, "No, we got to pass on that." And I was wondering why. He goes, "Yeah, the wind blows really strong on that street." I was like, "What are you talking about? How do you know that the wind blows heavily on that street?" And he was referring to that section out there. It's a wind tunnel. And I was like, "Oh man, we are way more conservative than a lot of other people, because someone's going to do this loan in a heartbeat." So that's one of many stories of how I learned our approach and perspective and lens we use for making decisions on lending. Well, as I wrap it up, I wanted to ask you, what is something that people might be surprised to learn about you outside of the lending or any of the other businesses that you are involved with?
Well, I can tell you something that's kind of a personal passion project for me this year that's definitely outside of private lending. I've gotten really involved with marathons.
Oh,
Last couple of
marathons. Okay.
years.
Yeah.
Right? So the big marathons like Chicago, New York, London, some of these big ones. And this stat came out because we make reusable bottles, right? Well, it turns out, if you've ever gone through one of these races, you go to the aid stations where they have water. They stack up trays and trays and trays of little disposable cups with water. People run by and they all line up and they grab a couple cups, splash water in their mouth, keep on running, drop the cups on the ground. So the Chicago Marathon goes through 2.6 million cups in one day. Half of the volunteers at that aid station spend their time raking up the cups and bagging the garbage. And so it's like this incredibly waste-producing event. I saw this, and then we make these reusable bottles. So we've ended up really connecting with these marathons, saying, how can we move away from the disposable cup model? And which has taken, it's been a really interesting thing for me, because after 25 years of making the bottles, we're in a real position to work with these races to help them kind of solve this problem. Yes, it helps the business, because if somebody buys a bottle, one of our bottles to use instead of disposable cup, hey, it's a bottle. But the real trick isn't just selling bottles, it's helping the races figure out how to change what they do to be able to get rid of these disposable cups. Was at the first major marathon this spring, which was the Paris Marathon, where they had a zero garbage rule. And so they had
You
no
said
cups.
this is in Paris?
It was in Paris.
Okay.
And so 57,000 finishers and not a single disposable cup used.
Whoa.
And so
wow.
It was a whole logistics thing, and actually something they figured out when they had the Olympics there. But it was how to have people with refill hoses and refill spigots and all these different combinations. So I was just blown away by how smoothly it went. And so we've been really investing to work with these other marathons to help them roll this out. We're here to provide a solution. And the Chicago people came back and said, we think we could probably reduce the number of our aid stations by half and reduce the number of our volunteers by 75% on the course. if
Wow.
we make this switch and greatly reduce the impact on the city as far as garbage creation and landfill. And so it's just kind of like a whole better system. And now we're working with them to kind of make that change. So it's like a passion project for me, because I got to say, like, I'm flying around and meeting with these folks, and I'm not selling products. I'm not pitching our company. I'm working with a guy who's an expert on crowd management, on how to get people through these stations and what kind of equipment can they use. And I find these things really interesting challenges, and especially I'm just the opposite of let's go buy a carbon credit or something like that.
Right.
I want to specifically do something to solve a problem. And so to me, like, this is a problem I'm uniquely positioned to like help out.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives me satisfaction at this point in life to be able to, think that, okay, if this really works over the next couple of years, this is going to be impacting millions of people who are out there doing 10Ks, half marathons, whatnot, in all the cities they're hosted in.
That's really, really cool. Yeah, I had no idea that you were that involved with the marathon side too. I'm just curious, how does that actually work? I mean, replacing the cups they're not running with bottles, right?
So it's a whole thing. Just for an example, like this is a soft flask. It's kind of a bottle.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Someone might fill this up with water, put it in a vest. There's running vests that people put these in the pockets. They put them in their waist. They might be wearing a waist belt. They put it in that. Other people like have a strap on these and just carry it in their hands like you would a bottle. Other people use kind of a traditional blow molded bottle and carry it. But then it's just the thought that if you stop and grab cups and you're trying to get this water in, you get like 3 ounces per station, right? And so you need to stop 20 times through the race to get enough water. Well, if you carry a 16-ounce bottle, right, or a 12-ounce bottle, and then you've got the water with you, you're getting all that water, you're not splashing it all over. You need to stop maybe a third as often. And so it does take you, they timed it, 9.7 seconds to refill a bottle from going over, filling it, and going back on the course. But what does it take you to stop 3 times for those Dixie cups of water, especially if there's a crowd of people or anything like that? So they're like, hey, this is a wash. Filling a bottle versus grabbing these cups. It does mean carrying a bottle with you, like in some way, either in a vest or in your hand or your pocket. It's all about educating the people before the event so they can prepare for the event. They say, train like you're going to race, right? So if you're going to carry a bottle,
get used to it.
Carry a bottle when you train. Figure it out. Watching it work in Paris was fantastic. To see 57,000 people, no garbage.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's great, man. Congratulations on that.